Translator, Dark Angel, Kurisu. At present, only a handful of routes remained. When 4 roads converged into 2 and 2 roads merged into 1, by that reckoning, one merely needed to overcome 2 more opponents to stand at the very summit. Naturally, there was still that Hunyu who refused to abide by any rule, presently stationed at a higher point, lying in wait to ambush. Yet swiftness did not equate to battle might. Once drawn into close-quarters struggle, the advantage of superior speed would be greatly diminished. Among the 5 of them, who would be the last to remain standing? On the next route, Yan Chanzhao against Kan Ye and Feng Yan against Ling Han. Go! Yan Chanzhao moved. With a flick of his sleeve, shoo, shoo, 7 war spears shot forth. These spears were condensed from origin power, pitch black throughout. Along their shafts were etched patterns formed from his martial intent. Kan Ye did not dare be the slightest bit careless. A whole tier lay between them. Such a gap could mean being utterly suppressed. He brandished his saber in a sweeping slash, unleashing his full skill without holding anything back. As saber light flashed, 5 streaks of saber chi burst forth in brilliant radiance. Truth be told, 5 streaks of saber chi was astonishingly impressive. Before Ling Han had entered discourse on the sword with Mo Gao, he too had only formed 5 streaks of sword chi, and that was still built upon the martial comprehension he had retained from his previous life. Yet the spiritual ocean tier was far too domineering. Moreover, Yan Tianzhao was clearly a genius whose battle prowess surpassed his cultivation. Kan Ye poured every last ounce into it and ding, 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 somehow managed to shatter 3 war spears, but 4 still remained, and no matter what he did, he could not shake them off. Pooh, pooh, pooh. In an instant he was pierced through by 4 war spears, and the force of the strike flung him away. Fortunately, Yan Tianzhao was evidently mindful of how much power he used. These 4 spears pierced into his shoulders and legs respectively, yet all missed his vital points. Otherwise, with the Rain Emperor seated at the peak, were he to make a move, it would herald a dramatic overturn of events. The 4 war spears carried Yan Chanzhao's martial intent. Thus, though the spears would disperse upon entering the body, since they were formed of origin power, the martial intent within them would still suppress Kan Ye. Kan Ye could not move in the slightest, and with a ping, he crashed heavily onto the ground. Hang! A figure darted out and seized Kan Ye. It was Liang Guangzu. When he beheld Ling Han, Feng Yan, and Yan Tianzhao nearing the summit, a complicated look flickered in his eyes. Yet he merely let out a sigh, withdrew his gaze, and began treating Kan Ye's injuries. Kan Ye's body trembled faintly, and one hand clenched tightly into a fist. He had even bitten down so hard on his lip that it had begun to bleed. Do not be disheartened. There is no shame in losing to a spiritual ocean tier elite. Liang Guangzu consoled his soul disciple. Kan Ye did not brighten for it. Instead, he looked toward Ling Han and said, "He is stronger than me." Near the summit, Ling Han was presently locked in a fierce battle with Feng Yan. "Ha ha ha, are you prepared?" Feng Yan sneered. "Now I stand in the spiritual ocean tier, so how will you block me?" He drove out a punch. Hong and 9 long sabers manifested, shooting toward Ling Han alongside his fist. These 9 long sabers were naturally formed from origin power. The martial intent within them became intricate patterns that shimmered upon their blades, as though they were divine sabers. Ling Han laughed aloud. He swept his sword in a slash and employed the 4-season sword technique. Each move contained 4 styles: winter, summer, autumn, and spring. 4 images revolved, forming an unbroken sword intent of formidable might. Ping, 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 ping. The 9 long sabers shattered at once, and Ling Han's 4-season sword technique also vanished at the same time. What Kan Ye saw was precisely this scene, and it was something he could not accept. Not long ago, he had still been able to cleave Ling Han in 2 with a single saber sweep. Ling Han had only escaped by resorting to a trick. But how much time had passed since then? Now Ling Han could disperse the assault of a spiritual ocean tier opponent, while he himself was defeated by a single strike. The gap between the 2 was beyond description. These 3 are the true monsters. You need not chase after them. Just walk at your own pace, Liang Guangzu advised. At the same time, he truly felt it a great pity, for he had once wished to take Ling Han as his disciple. Yet because Feng Yan's matter had swiftly occurred after that, He had been completely pushed to the side opposing Ling Han. None knew that Liang Guangzhu had once stayed at the Winter Moon sect and had even received guidance from a powerful elite of the sect, which was how he attained his present level of achievement. And that powerful elite was precisely Feng Yan's master. Thus, Liang Guangzhu would do his utmost to fulfill Feng Yan's requests in repayment of that favor. Yet an even stronger battle spirit flashed within Kan Ye's eyes. He would absolutely not admit defeat. He wished to walk to the utmost end of this saber path. In Rain Country, he could only achieve so much. Thus he wanted to step beyond this land and into the wider world to refine and temper his saber arts. He would either become a grandmaster saber wielder or die upon this path. Hang! Feng Yan's first assault did not succeed, and he was about to strike again when he saw Yan Qianzhao had already defeated his opponent and continued up the hill. Thus, he could only set Ling Han aside for the moment and race toward Yan Qianzhao. His fist shot out, and once again, 9 battle sabers swept forth in attack. Yan Qianzhao did not dare underestimate Feng Yan's assault. Thus, he could only turn back, flick his sleeve, and likewise launch 9 war spears. Peng, peng, peng. War spears and battle sabers collided, and both shattered at the same time. Seizing this opening, Feng Yan surged forward and halted Yan Tianzhao from advancing. After all, who knew could be disregarded? If she truly wished for first place, they likely ought to have surrendered and gone home. With a sharp whistle, Ling Han too charged into the fray, sword in hand. Hong, hong, hong. It became a grand melee among the 3 of them. These 3 young men all acted by their own will. There was no chance for any 2 to join forces against the 3rd. Thus, every attack they unleashed was aimed at the other 2, rendering the scene incomparably chaotic. Yan Jiang, Tianzhao, and Feng Yan were both in the spiritual ocean tier. Each strike they delivered carried circulating martial intent and possessed shocking might. Yet Ling Han, who was clearly in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, was only slightly weaker than the 2 of them. Thus, neither Feng Yan nor Yan Tianzhao dared underestimate him. This left the spectators dumbfounded, as though their very worldview were crumbling. After a 24-year-old spiritual ocean tier elite appeared, another spiritual ocean tier elite of merely 15 years emerged. Then came a 5 or 6-year-old in the gushing spring tier, which once again struck their fragile hearts. Then, this 5 or 6-year-old gushing spring tier martial artist erupted with a speed that stunned even those of the spiritual ocean tier. It nearly made them die of shock. And now splendid, here was yet another monster-like gushing spring tier martial artist, able to stand against spiritual ocean tier opponents, while he himself was only at the first layer of the gushing spring tier. It was enough to make them feel as though they were dreaming. Was this still the martial world they knew? Peng, peng, peng. The 3 were entangled in a furious struggle, and as they impeded one another in turn, it was difficult to determine a victor for the time being. In terms of present battle prowess, Yan Tianzhao should be strongest, for his cultivation was highest, having reached the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Second would be Feng Yan, at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and last would be Ling Han. On the surface, he seemed to be at the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier, yet in truth he was at the 8th layer of the gushing spring tier, and his real battle prowess closely approached the spiritual ocean tier. Yet, because whoever was slightly stronger would naturally draw the fiercest attacks from the other 2, he could not seize the upper hand. This was what forced the battle into a deadlock. However, it was also possible that this fragile balance might be shattered in an instant. For at this moment, none of the 3 combatants had yet displayed their strongest battle prowess. If any one of them suddenly erupted and unleashed an overwhelmingly powerful strike, it might be possible to fling the other 2 away and seize victory with that single move. The winner would be the first to appear before the Rain Emperor. But since matters had developed to this point, the designs of the 3 had changed. They would defeat the other 2 and become the champion. They were all proud young men, and when faced with a powerful foe, their first thought was to defeat him, not retreat from or avoid him. Otherwise, if they lost their invincibility, what difference would remain between them and any ordinary genius? Heng! Feng Yan was the first to reveal his hidden card. As flashes of silver light appeared over his body, he had activated his special physical constitution of mirror light body. Translator, Dark Angel, Editor, Kurisu. The instant he set mirror light body into motion, Feng Yan's fighting might surge skyward. He would endure 20% less harm and could even rebound 20% of an opponent's force back onto them. This was a frightful thing indeed. Moreover, the more strikes he received, the more terrifying the mirror light body's effects became. After only a few exchanges, Ling Han and Yan Tianzhao had already stopped trading blows with each other and had, in effect, joined hands to press Feng Yan. Feng Yan immediately threw back his head and roared with laughter. Though the pressure upon him had greatly increased from being assaulted by two young, powerful elites at the same time, the mere fact that he could hold them both at bay alone filled him with a fierce sense of accomplishment. Today's battle was not solely about personal grudges, nor only about the mystical power. It also involved a contest for the title of the strongest among Rain Country's younger generation, or perhaps even across the whole 9 nations of the desolate north. They could not help but fight. Yan Tianzhao snorted coldly, and a green 6-pointed star flashed within his eyes. In that instant, his battle prowess spiked, and he was able to reverse the unfavorable situation at once, now capable of standing against Feng Yan by himself. The three were tangled in a chaotic melee. Yet because Yan Tianzhao's prowess had suddenly risen, he immediately drew the brunt of Feng Yan's attacks, so it had practically become a furious clash between himself and Feng Yan. The pressure upon Ling Han lessened. Neither Feng Yan nor Yan Tianzhao had truly taken Ling Han seriously. No matter how one looked at it, Ling Han was only in the gushing spring tier. Since he had not even stepped into the spiritual ocean tier, how could they possibly regard him as a genuine opponent? Underestimating him? They would have to pay a price for that. Ling Han retreated a few steps and began to gather his strength. The mysterious 3,000 awaited, to be unleashed once enough power had been amassed. This sword technique was incomparably fierce and demanded a measure of time to accumulate its might, yet that would only be the span of 1 or 2 breaths. At once, an imposing aura spilled from Ling Han, and the concealed might beneath it was shockingly terrifying. Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, who had been locked in savage combat, immediately halted and turned their gaze toward Ling Han. They were jolted by the sword intent emanating from him. Once this slash descended, it would assuredly be a devastating, heaven-shaking strike. Ling Han drew his sword, and in an instant, sword after images blossomed magnificently across the sky, surging toward Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao like a monstrous wave. Feng Yan's expression changed abruptly. The power within this slash was stronger by an unknown number of times than the 4-season sword technique. He had thought the 4-season sword technique to be Ling Han's ace in the hole, his final trump card, yet he had never imagined Ling Han could reveal an even more powerful sword art. It was utterly unbelievable to him. The sword rose, and it seemed as though wind and cloud were birthed along with it. Feng Yan swiftly let out a thunderous roar. This slash was far too powerful. If he relied on mirror light body alone, he would not be able to receive it, so he had to bring out his strongest hidden card. As he roared tumultuously, his body actually swelled as though it had been pumped full of air. The inconceivable sight followed. Black fur sprouted rapidly across his body as if he had become an ape. Yet his aura surged correspondingly, climbing from the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, the middle period of the first layer, the late period, the peak period. Without the slightest stagnation, he burst through and directly entered the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier. It was still rising. The second layer of the spiritual ocean tier, the third layer, and at last it stopped at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. He once again thrust out a fist, and just as before, 9 battle sabers shot forth with it. Yet they were far more profound than previously, and the martial intent within them was vastly more powerful as well. On the other side, Yan Tianzhao's eyes narrowed, and green fog billowed from every part of his body, condensing into a shield-like object before him, with him protected behind it. Shoo! The sword images streaked forward, and truly, it was an earth-shattering attack. Upon the peak, the Rain Emperor had also risen to his feet. The face that had once been calm now wore a shocked expression. Clearly, the might behind Ling Han's move had exceeded even his expectations. The swords reached their targets. Hong, 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 hong. Thunderous booms rang out, and one stream of light after another collided, crashed, and shattered, casting forth endless splendor. All those at the foot of the hill watched with wide, dizzy eyes. These few young men were obviously only in the early stage of the spiritual ocean tier, yet they displayed battle prowess that should belong to the middle stage or even the late stage of the spiritual ocean tier. No, there was even a fellow who was only at the first layer of the gushing spring tier. This was too much nonsense. Did that mean the ranks in martial arts were only for show? After this single exchange, Ling Han, Feng Yan, and Yan Tianzhao separated, leaving a certain distance between one another. For the moment, none of them moved, merely standing opposite each other. I truly cannot underestimate you, Feng Yan said solemnly. Yet his entire body was blanketed in black fur, and his muscles bulged. So he had completely transformed into a hulking brute, with not the slightest trace of his original appearance. It was as though a giant ape had crashed the scene and utterly ruined the image. However, now that you have forced me to reveal my trump card, the two of you are only fit to be trampled beneath my feet, he laughed wildly. Ling Han frowned faintly and said, Wild strength berserk ape bloodline? At last he understood why Feng Yan had been accepted as a disciple by a spiritual infant-tier elite from the Winter Moon sect. Wild strength berserk ape was an ancient demonic beast, and it was rumored that such demonic beasts stood at the Shattering Void tier. Moreover, they were an extremely powerful race even within the Shattering Void tier. Since he had inherited this kind of bloodline, Feng Yan could also possibly break through to the Shattering Void tier. Who could resist the temptation of having a disciple in the Shattering Void tier? The greater one's strength, the more powerful one's desire. Since they themselves could not possibly reach the Shattering Void tier in this lifetime, then having a disciple who could would likewise grant them a powerful satisfaction and sense of accomplishment. Feng Yan could not help but tense and said, You even know about wild strength berserk ape? In truth, in the past, he himself had not known what kind of bloodline he possessed. It had only been discovered by chance by that powerful Winter Moon sect elite, who recognized it. Yet Ling Han had actually identified it with a single glance. This fellow was far too knowledgeable, wasn't he? Ling Han smiled calmly and said, So what if it is wild strength berserk ape? Your bloodline is extremely thin at present, and can only raise your cultivation level by 3 layers, so it is nothing to worry about. Then I'll just have to let you see how much I am nothing to worry about. Feng Yan was flung into a furious rage. The hatred he bore toward Ling Han, who had slain his brother, burned fiercely in his heart, and as he had activated a demonic beast bloodline, his temperament was also greatly affected. He became exceedingly brusque and violent, and in an instant charged straight at Ling Han. Siwon Seng, his 10 fingers spread and transformed into sharp claws like knife blades. Feng Yan swung his hands repeatedly, and his claws tore through the air, actually forming multiple air blades. Shoo, shoo, shoo. They flew toward Ling Han first, while Feng Yan himself followed close behind. His whole body exuded a shockingly violent aura, as if he were an ancient demonic beast resurrected into the world. Ling Han frowned slightly. The bloodline of an ancient demonic beast truly was a headache, he snorted. With no time to employ the mysterious 3000, he merely swept his sword and used the 4-season sword technique. Instantly, the images of spring, summer, autumn, and winter unfolded, making one feel as though the turning of the seasons could be experienced in a single moment. Poo, 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 poo. The air blades shot out, and the sword move of the 4-season sword technique stalled. Feng Yan seized the opening and charged in, driving out a fist. 9 battle sabers appeared, ruthlessly streaking toward Ling Han's chest. Ling Han used the shadow wind technique and retreated rapidly. Pang! Yet he still suffered somewhat. His whole body flung 30 feet away. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of his lips. Even with body of rock cliff formed, he still could not fully withstand Feng Yan's strike. After all, the power of a 4th-layer spiritual ocean tier elite, combined with the wild strength berserk ape bloodline, amounted to far too terrifying an attack prowess. Feng Yan laughed arrogantly and said, "In ancient days, the wild strength berserk ape was practically invincible. Their claws carried their own rules of the world and could tear through all defenses. Ling Han, today I will definitely cripple both your legs."